Okay, so let's unpack this because there is a trap in the English language that we fall into almost every single time we talk about spirituality.
Oh, absolutely. A huge trap.
Yeah, we have this big messy bucket of words like enlightened, awakened, liberated, nirvana. And to the average person or even the average yoga practitioner, they all sound like synonyms for the exact same thing.
Right. They just mean you made it.
Exactly. Like you won the spiritual video game and it's game over.
Yeah, it's the happily ever after of the spiritual narrative. We just kind of assume that once you reach the peak of the mountain, the story ends and the credits roll.
Right. But today we are going to look at a source that takes a sledgehammer to that assumption. We are doing a deep dive into a transcript from a content creator known as the Blind Muslim Yogi.
Which is an incredible title right out of the gate.
It really is. And right out of the gate, he makes a claim that is honestly a bit disorienting. He argues that Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha himself, was awake, but he was not liberated.
And just to be clear, immediately here, he doesn't mean that as a criticism of the Buddha.
Right. He's not insulting him.
No, not at all. He's not saying the Buddha failed or got a B- in spirituality. He is making a very specific, very technical distinction between what it means to be awake and what it means to be liberated.
Which sounds like semantics at first, right? Like we're just splitting hairs over old texts.
Yeah, it does sound like that, yeah.
But as we went through this material, I realized this distinction actually changes the entire map of the cosmos. I mean, it changes how we understand reincarnation, our own memories, and even the physical objects sitting on our desks right now.
It really does.
Oh.
It completely reframes the goal of spiritual practice from escaping the world to seeing the world correctly. And that is a massive shift.
It is. Before we get into the heavy metaphysics, though, we really should contextualize who we are listening to, the blind Muslim yogi. It feels like the start of a riddle.
It is a bit of a riddle, and it represents a convergence of traditions that usually don't sit at the same table. You have the Islamic background, the yogic discipline. He's been practicing for nearly 50 years, and on top of that, he identifies as a master bioenergy healer, working specifically with critical care and terminal illness recovery.
50 years is a long time to be studying this stuff. And the blind part isn't incidental, is it?
Not at all.
Because later on, when we talk about how he perceives energy in the physical world, the fact that he cannot see with his physical eyes becomes incredibly relevant.
Precisely. He's operating with a different set of sensors, so to speak.
He's built a career and a philosophy on seeing what the rest of us just ignore.
Yes, but for the first part of this deep dive, we need to put on our theological hats.
Yeah.
Because the source is analyzing the Buddha, but he's doing it through a very specific lens, the Vedantic or Hindu perspective.
So this is like the ultimate crossover event. He's looking at the founder of Buddhism using the logic of Hinduism.
Right. And the crux of his argument starts with a story. It's a famous moment where people asked the Buddha about his status. They didn't ask, are you a god or are you a man? The specific inquiry, according to our source, was effectively, are you liberated?
And if I'm the Buddha and I've just spent years meditating under the Bodhi tree, suffering and starving and finally breaking through to the ultimate truth, and someone asks, are you liberated? I feel like the answer is a resounding yes.
You would think so. That seems like the logical conclusion to the story.
Right.
But the source points out that the Buddha didn't say yes. He also didn't say no. He completely sidestepped that binary. He simply said, I am awake.
Now, I always thought Buddha literally means the awakened one, and I just assumed that was a poetic way of saying the liberated one, like I woke up from the dream of life.
According to this source, absolutely not. And this is where it gets fascinating. He treats liberation as a hard technical status. Think of it like a binary logic gate in computing.
Okay.
You are either in the system or you are out of the system.
The system being the cycle of birth and death, like reincarnation.
Correct. Liberation, or moksha, means you exit. You check out of the Hotel Earth, you hand in your key card, and you never ever come back. It's the end of the line. Total dissolution.
Wow.
So the source's logic is if the Buddha was truly liberated in that sense, he would have just said yes. It's a yes or no question. The fact that he pivoted to I am awake implies by omission that the answer to are you liberated is actually no.
That is a massive distinction. So awake is a state of mind, a state of consciousness. But liberation is a state of location, or like a state of existence.
That's a great way to put it. The source argues there are thousands, maybe millions of people who are awake. They are conscious. They are aware of the truth. But are they liberated? No, they are still here.
Okay, but this begs a huge question. If the Buddha, who is literally the poster child for spiritual success, if he isn't liberated, then who is?
Right.
Like, why is he stuck here? Did he miss a step? It feels almost unfair to say the Buddha is still grinding in the cycle like the rest of us.
This is where that Vedantic lens is crucial. The source references Hindu texts, specifically the Puranas, that actually predicted the birth of the Buddha. But they don't classify him as a renegade monk who figured it out on his own.
What do they classify him as?
They classify him as an avatar,
An avatar, like an incarnation of a deity.
specifically an incarnation of the Vishnu aspect.
Mm-hmm.
The source lists a pattern here to prove his point. He mentions Krishna. He mentions the tortoise incarnation, the boar incarnation.
Okay, so in this worldview, the Buddha is part of a lineup. He is Team Vishnu.
Exactly. He's part of a very specific spiritual lineage.
I can hear some Buddhist scholars grinding their teeth right now because this is a classic theological debate. Hinduism absorbing Buddhism into its own pantheon.
It is a very old debate, yes.
But we aren't here to debate the theology. We're here to understand the source's logic. So if we accept the premise that Buddha is an avatar of Vishnu, why does that prevent him from being liberated?
Because of the job description?
Huge job description.
Think about what an avatar actually is. The source explains that these are empowered entities. They aren't random tourists visiting Earth. They are deployed.
Deployed. That sounds almost military.
It is highly purposeful. They return to Earth specifically when there's a decline in Dharma or when evil has reached a level that requires a cosmic correction.
Ah, I see. So it's a deployment. You don't get to retire if you're the guy they call when the building is on fire.
Exactly. Liberation implies you have no more attachments, no more duties. You dissolve into the infinite. But an avatar has a very specific duty: to restore knowledge. The source says they return when knowledge is lost and needs reviving.
So if your fundamental nature, your actual cosmic purpose, is to come back and fix things whenever they break, you cannot be liberated. By definition, you have to keep coming back.
Right. It's like a fireman. A fireman can't say, I am ethically opposed to entering burning buildings. His job is to enter them.
Because he's a fireman.
Right. So is Krishna liberated? No. Is the Buddha liberated? No. Because the mechanism, the avatar, requires a return ticket.
That completely flips the script on how we view spiritual hierarchy.
How so?
We'll usually think the guy who leaves forever is the winner, the one who breaks the cycle. But this suggests the highest level is the one who stays on the payroll.
It really leans heavily into the bodhisattva ideal, the being who delays their own final exit to help everyone else. The source is saying the Buddha is awake, he knows the truth, he sees the reality, but he is still on the clock. He hasn't quit the job.
So let's talk about being on the clock. If the Buddha is here to do a job, what makes him different from the rest of us? I mean, I'm here, I'm doing a job, I'm definitely not an avatar. What separates the awake being from the asleep being?
This brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of the source material, and honestly my favorite part of this deep dive, the concept of Maya.
Maya, the big villain of yoga philosophy. It's usually translated as illusion, right?
It is usually translated as illusion.
It is usually translated as an illusion or a trap. We're taught we need to pierce the veil of Maya.
Right, break out of the matrix. Exactly. But the source gives a much more functional, almost mechanical description of it. He calls it an illusory curtain, but he argues it's actually a necessary tool for human functioning.
A tool? I've never heard Maya described as helpful. It's usually the thing keeping us miserable.
Well, consider the alternative. The source asks a really practical question. How would you live your life today? Go to your job, take care of your kids, pay your mortgage, if you were constantly remembering your past lives.
I mean, I guess it'd be distracting.
Distracting. It would be paralyzing.
True.
Imagine you're trying to focus on a spreadsheet or just making coffee, but simultaneously you are grieving a spouse you lost in the 14th century.
Oh, wow.
And you're traumatized by a war you fought in ancient Rome, and you're worried about a famine you lived through in the Iron Age.
Yeah.
All at the exact same time.
Yeah, okay. You'd be a mess. You'd be totally catatonic. You couldn't even have a normal conversation because you'd be remembering the last 50 times you had that exact conversation with 50 different people across history.
You couldn't function. The source says Maya wipes the memory to make you effective in your current assignment. It makes you a blank slate. That amnesia is actually a mercy. It allows you to focus on the drama right in front of you.
That makes so much sense. It's like clearing your browser history so the computer runs faster. You need that focus.
Correct. But, and here's the definition of awake, the Buddha isn't behind that curtain.
So he has the browser history. All of it.
He sees the entire continuity. He knows he's been here before, he knows he'll be here again, and he knows why he is here. He isn't deluded by the drama of the current moment because he sees the entire arc.
That is a heavy burden to carry. To function in the world while knowing the entire history of it, it takes a massive amount of mental horsepower to handle that data stream without breaking down.
It really does. And that's why the source differentiates between us and him.
Mm.
We need Maya to survive. The awake person has the capacity to operate without that filter. They don't need the amnesia to stay sane.
Okay, so being awake means seeing the timeline clearly, past, present, future. But the source goes deeper than just time, doesn't he?
He does.
He talks about seeing the physical world differently, and this is where his background as a blind bioenergy healer really comes into play.
Yes. This is the shift from time to matter. The source argues that 99.9% of us are basically hallucinating when we look at the world.
Hallucinating. I'm looking at my microphone right now. It seems pretty real. It's solid metal. If I drop it on my foot, it's going to hurt.
You see a microphone, you see metal, plastic, you see an object. The source says this is the normal view. We see things as dead, inanimate.
Right.
We see the chair as just a thing to sit on. We see the ground as just dirt to walk on. We objectify reality.
And what does the awake person see?
They see energy, and not just in a metaphorical good vibes kind of way. The source is very literal here.
Literal how?
He says when the spiritual eye opens, you see that the chair, the mountain, the ocean, the soil, they're all vibrating.
He says they have consciousness, right?
He does. He says they have independent frequency and independent consciousness.
Wait, let's pause there. Independent consciousness. He's claiming my desk has a consciousness. That sounds a little crowded.
That is the claim.
Yeah.
Just as you have a frequency, the wood in your desk has a frequency. It has a rudimentary form of being.
Yeah.
And because this source is blind, he emphasizes that he isn't distracted by the shell of the object.
The visual shell.
Right. He perceives the vibration first. He isn't fooled by the surface appearance of a solid desk.
That is wild. It sounds like science fiction, like seeing the green code in the Matrix. But he talks about this as a lived reality. He says he actually uses this perception to do his healing work.
Right. He's not just philosophizing in a cave somewhere. He's working in critical care. He mentions he studied under masters from the Far East, the Middle East, and scientific communities. For him, seeing energy is a diagnostic tool.
So it has a practical application.
Exactly. If he can see the frequency of a person or an organ, he can influence it.
He talks about a protocol he developed too, didn't he? A specific program for normal people?
Yes, a 5-minute yoga and meditation program.
Which I have to say implies he understands the modern world very well. If you tell someone today to meditate for an hour, they won't do it. Tell them 5 minutes and you might actually have a chance.
Exactly. He says he adapted ancient protocols to be quicker, faster, easier for the 21st century. But the mechanism is based on this awake perspective. He's trying to get people to access that energy layer, even just for a few minutes, to relieve stress without drugs, to change their consciousness.
So if we tie this all back to the Buddha,
Let's do it.
the Buddha is awake because he sees this energy layer all the time. He doesn't see dead matter. He sees a living, vibrating universe. And he sees his own place in the timeline without the amnesia of Maya.
Correct. And because he sees all of that, the suffering, the energy, the connection, he is compelled to help. That's the avatar function we talked about.
Right.
He uses that awake state to guide the rest of us who are still stumbling around in the dark, bumping into the furniture because we think it's just furniture.
It really changes the tone of spiritual practice. I think a lot of people get into meditation because they want to escape. They want to check out. Stop the world. I want to get off.
The eject button fantasy.
Yes.
We want the peace of nothingness.
Yeah.
Just quiet.
Right. But this perspective suggests that the highest form of spirituality isn't the guy who ejects. It's the guy who stays. The one who could leave, who has the clearance to leave, but chooses to come back into the burning building because he knows how to handle the fire.
It transforms spirituality from an act of self-preservation into an act of service. If the Buddha isn't liberated, it's because he cares too much to leave. It's a difference between freedom from the world and freedom in the world.
That is actually really comforting.
Isn't it?
It feels less lonely. The idea that the boss is still in the building walking the floors with us.
And that the world around you isn't dead. That's the other comforting part. If the source is right, you aren't sitting in an empty room right now. You are surrounded by living energy. The chair, the walls, the plant in the corner, it's all company.
It demands a certain level of respect, doesn't it? You can't just treat the world like a garbage dump if you really believe it's all conscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a deep sense of reverence.
Yeah.
You're interacting with a living system at all times. And maybe that's the first step to becoming awake ourselves.
Yeah. We don't need to be avatars to start.
Right. We don't need to recall our past lives right now, thank goodness, because honestly, I can barely remember what I had for breakfast today.
Same here.
But we can try to shift how we look at the present moment.
Hmm.
We can try to open that spiritual eye just a crack.
I want to try this with you, the listener, right now. Just a little experiment based on the blind Muslim yogi's worldview. Unless you're driving, please keep your eyes on the road. But if you can, look at a simple object near you. A cup, a pen, your phone.
Don't just scan it. Don't just label it phone in your brain and move on. Really look at it.
Try to imagine just for a second the atomic vibration holding it together.
Right.
We know from basic physics that it is vibrating. It's mostly empty space and energy.
Now try to entertain the possibility that it has a frequency, that it has a rudimentary form of being.
Does it change how you handle it? Does it change how you feel about the space you're sitting in right now?
It's a small step, but it's a step toward opening that spiritual eye. It's moving from seeing a dead world to seeing a living one.
And that leads us to the final lingering question this deep dive has raised for me. If liberation means leaving, and awake means staying to help, is liberation really the ultimate goal?
That is the provocative thought, isn't it? Maybe the goal isn't to get out. Maybe the goal is to wake up so fully that you can be here, in the mess, in the noise, without being crushed by it. To be in the world, but not of the illusion.
If the Buddha is still clocking in, maybe we shouldn't be in such a rush to clock out.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the nature of the Buddha, the veil of Maya, and the living world. It's been quite a trip.
Take care of your energy, everyone.
We'll see you in the next deep dive. Stay curious.